Hello, everyone, and here's a question for you. If I had wanted to come up with a more clickbaity title than Sodom and Gomorrah, what would it have been? So, for those of you who know anything about Proust, you know that that is simply the alternate title, one of two titles for the fourth volume. So yes, that's what I'm here to talk about, the fourth volume of Remembrance of Things Past, or In Search of Lost Time, whichever of those titles you prefer. And let me start by expressing an error. In my previous video, I talked about the memoirs of Saint-Simon and referred to him as the Marquis de Saint-Simon. And if anyone who has read Saint-Simon knows, if there was one thing he was concerned about, it was titles and status and all of that kind of thing. And he was a duke, not a marquis. So my apologies, particularly if any of his descendants are still with us. So anyway, what is Sodom and Gomorrah about? Well, as I learned in the early pages of the volume, it actually refers to male homosexuality, which is associated with Sodom, and Gomorrah, which, at least as far as Proust is concerned, is associated with lesbianism. And so, with that as the volume title, those are, in fact, major themes throughout the book. Now, as the translator points out, the book gets started with a fairly lengthy description of the Baron de Charlieu engaging with a neighbor of Marcel named Jupien, which becomes an extended description of effectively male hustler pickup, and not in any explicit detail. This is not pornography. Anybody who expects pornography out of this book will be severely disappointed. But it's setting things up both in focusing on Charlieu, who becomes a major character in what follows, and just the basic theme and feel, if you will, of what to expect. So that's how it gets started. The bulk of the book is about Marcel's second trip to Baalbec, a town on the coast of Normandy. In his previous visit, which was in Volume 2, he fell in love with Albertine, who is another figure who starts to become more important in Volume 4. And it also established the method that Proust will employ quite a bit in what follows. Now, I don't remember if I actually mentioned this about Volume 3, but as much as I really enjoy and appreciate the attention to social ritual that these books involve, I'm getting to a point where it's a bit too much, or at least that I don't think it's really justified any longer. So, for example, in Volume 3, the Duchesse du Guermantes gives a dinner, which was her thing, and she was a big society figure. It goes on, this is a single dinner, it goes on for 150 pages. Now, I don't mean to suggest that in that 150 pages it's repetition. It remains new material all throughout. And to Proust's credit, much of it is structured on introducing new people and telling us a lot about them, both their ups and their downs, pros and cons, etc. It's very well done. And yet, it gets to a point where you really have had enough. And in Volume 4, there's even more of that. And because the milieu that he is in now is different, there's yet more information about more people, all of which is interesting in a kind of incidental way. But when you get more and more and more and more of it, it really does get to be too much. Now, to Proust's credit, I think one of the things that really comes through very well is that he's very attentive to the complexities of human behavior, the contradictions that we all embody. And he doesn't moralize. There are plenty of people he doesn't like, and he doesn't try to hide the fact that he doesn't like them, but he is not afraid to give them the occasional compliment. For example, there's a character named Charles Morel, who eventually becomes associated with the Baron. He's a musician, he's a virtuoso violinist, and he's extremely opportunistic, manipulative, and really is using everyone around him, which Proust makes very clear. But at the same time, he is also capable of kindnesses and is not entirely negative. That's what's really most interesting about the characterizations, not just that there are so many of them, or even that they're so detailed, but that Proust maintains this balance between good and bad. I don't want to indulge in the tedium of talking about tedium, so I'll just mention a few things. There's a lengthy section in Volume 4 in which another character, Brichot, who's relatively minor, who has a lot of information about the etymology of the place names in Normandy. Now, Proust finds this fascinating, and it goes on and on about all these small towns that you've probably never heard of, never will hear of again, and where their names come from, whether it's Latin, from Norse, from whatever. And so it's interesting information, but it really doesn't advance things very much. And after a while, it gets really tedious. And there's a lot of that, especially given that the Baron's family and the people that they deal with are all obsessed with genealogy and who goes further back longer and all this kind of stuff. And after a while, you just don't care. And you don't really care that so-and-so is a cousin or a third cousin or aunt or whatever of so-and-so. It just is way too much. And it's especially true in the final pages because there happens to be a lot of cultural references which are footnoted, and being a good reader, I diligently go back and forth. It's just like one after another. And so it really does detract from being able to enjoy what you're reading. So I would say that one of the disadvantages to Proust's approach is that he will write about whatever he finds interesting. And the way it is written is interesting. This is to say, as language, the way he chooses to describe it. But he isn't able to make us interested in what he finds interesting. And perhaps the best example of this is his fascination or obsession or love of Albertine. Now, there's a lot written about her. And it's not that she's entirely flat, but I have to say that she is not really differentiated so effectively that we have a good sense of her or her behavior. And even granting the fact that this is written from a love-struck point of view, there just seems to be a real limit in how much we're told about her, and therefore it's very difficult for us to feel anything about her individually. And I would say that that is the biggest single problem in Proust's method, that yes, he goes to great lengths, and yes, he does it beautifully, but he isn't able to make it go one bit further and make us care about those people as anything other than the object of his description. And on a final note, I'll say that of course, I'm going on to Volume 5. I did a little research at Wikipedia, and apparently Volumes 5 and 6 are the most contentious in the 7 volumes because they were published after Proust had died. And so it's not really clear how much say he had in what got published and what should be included, what might eventually have been excised if he had had the opportunity to go through it, whatever. And it's not incidental because I also looked up how long the next volume is. It's over 700 pages. And I really find it hard to anticipate wanting to read 700 pages more of this kind of detailed description of people, no matter how emotional it may make Proust. It's that inability to make me, at least, care about what I'm reading that is making this into more of a chore at this point. But I'm going to plug ahead and I will let everybody know. And if you disagree, violently tell me. But I don't know. I'm at a point now where I can say of Proust that I think he's a great writer, but I can't ever imagine wanting to go back to him as anything other than more like isolated moments here and there. But on that note, I will talk to you later.